Hello and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Eric May, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for our next live presentation from Chesapeake Gold Corp. Please note, you can submit questions in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view the company's availability for one-on-one meetings through the Schedule Meetings tab found on the conference platform. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Alan Pangborn, President and CEO of Chesapeake Gold Corp, which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the symbol CHPGF, and also on the TSXV under the symbol CKG. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you, Eric, and good morning, everybody, and welcome to our presentation today about the Chesapeake Gold Company and our two projects. Before I move on, obviously the typical cautionary notes, I will be making forward-looking statements today about our projects. So just an overall view of the company. Firstly, we announced yesterday a new oxide gold discovery at the Lucy project, which is in Sinaloa. That included 6.1 grams per ton of gold over 24 meters from the surface and several other very interesting hits along a 500-meter long trend, which obviously we're going to follow up on. And I'll talk some more about that in a moment. Additionally, I want to talk to you about our very large undeveloped gold silver deposit. It's one of the largest in the world. It's about 17 million ounces of gold and about 420 million ounces of silver in M&I. And then you add in the inferred as well, it takes you up to 19 million ounces of gold and just under 500 million ounces of silver. So very large deposit, also in Mexico. During the last couple of years, we've confirmed that there's actually a higher grade core than when we took over. We've also been working on a technology that I'll talk about later that allows us to heap leach it to oxidize it in the heap leach environment. And that technology is significantly greener, has a much lower environmental impact than the alternatives, which would be autoclaves. We put out a PEA in late 2021, showed that it's a very financeable, deliverable, and then expandable project. We're in Mexico, in Durango with Metates, and in Sinaloa with Lucy. They're good, mature mining regions in Mexico. There's lots of historic mining in the area and current operations. We're well funded. We've currently got about 24 million in the treasury. To give you some idea of burn rate, we spent about $10 million over the last 2.5 years. So not a significant burn rate. We've got plenty of cash to keep going, even with the new discovery at Lucy. Large supportive shareholders. Eric Sprott is our largest single shareholder with about 11% of the company. Sun Valley are also in there at about the same level. Management, I'm the largest shareholder in management. I own 11.something% of the company as well. I'm the second largest shareholder. And currently we trade at an extremely low value compared to the potential value of the project. So I'll go into some detail about both of these projects now. So starting off, Lucy. This was put out yesterday, so sorry, some of you probably haven't had a chance to have a look at it, but I encourage you to go to the website. There is a specific page about Lucy. It is some amazing drill results, some amazing samples, as you can see in those photos. There's sections 3 meters at 19.4 grams a ton, another 3 meter section at over 10 grams a ton. It is in Sinaloa. It's only 5 kilometers away from a paved road, and there's a gravel road access. It's relatively shallow. These results that we put out represent a 1,700 meter drill program, about 14 holes. There was about 7 or 8 trenches prior to that. And as you can see, there are some really amazing hits up and down that strike. 5 meters of strike, still open at both ends. We're still trying to work out the exact dip of the ore body. Looks like it dips to the south. And obviously there's a follow-up work program we're working on at the moment to look at filling in some of the gaps and also looking at extensions of that structure both to the northeast and to the southwest. So that's Lucy. have a look at it. It's a really exciting project. We've only just started. It's from surface. It's all oxides. It could be a really nice project to be able to get into production earlier and fund the rest of the development. So that's Lucy. The second project is Metatis. Some of you may be aware of Metatis from before. It used to be a very large, highly capital intensive, $3.5 billion that produced 500,000 ounces a year. That was never a project that we could develop ourselves. So we've always looked at this as potentially a smaller project. We joined the company 2.5 years ago, came with a technology that allows us to oxidize the sulfides in a heap leach environment. That gives us the ability to start with a smaller project, significantly less capital, $360 million, still have a 31-year mine life at 150,000 ounces a year gold equivalent, and a $1.9 billion NPV. So still a very attractive project. It's obviously way bigger than Lucy. It's more advanced than Lucy. It's been all drilled out, so we don't need to do a lot of drilling there. It's truly a metallurgical technology story to advance this project. So a few more details, some of them I've already mentioned. The deposit is one of the largest undeveloped gold and silver deposits in the world. We initially targeted the high grade portion. We did some infill drilling into that and showed that there was a higher grade core. And if you go back through some of the interviews on our website, you'll see that I've talked about that many, many times. We were able to show that that high grade core is about 16% higher grade than the original model showed. We've rebuilt the model. We're focused on that first 200 million tons at about a 1 gram a ton equivalent at about 15,000 tons a day. So the new resource we put out, as I said, an increase in the gold grade of about 16%. That incorporates all the drilling from about 23 holes that we did into that high grade core in 2021, 2022. And those are the resource numbers that I've mentioned earlier. So the key to Metatis is to unlock the metallurgy. Some of you will have seen at least the picture on the bottom right before. We came with a technology that allows us to oxidize the ore and effectively change it from that gray color where it starts to that brown color on the right. That is literally the iron sulfides rusting. If you want an analogy, it's the same as rust on your car. You're converting iron sulfide to iron oxide, and in that process, you release the gold and silver. We're doing a lot of testing around different size fractions, reagent strengths, different mixes of reagents, pHs, on and off irrigation, a whole bunch of different variables to find the best conditions to get this to oxidize as fast as possible. If any of you have been following the story, you'll remember that we had a surprise when the first fresh samples were oxidizing slower, and we weren't really sure why. And so the blue dotted line was what we put into the public domain about a year ago. We were looking to find out what was wrong. We found the issue. We repeated some of those columns and we got the black line, which put us back on track to the very first results that we issued, which allows us to get to about a 60% gold recovery, which is a significant increase on no oxidation. And beyond that, as we were testing all of those conditions that I listed on the previous slide, we found another set of conditions that are 50% faster again. So the green lines represent those columns. That test work is still ongoing. The plan is to keep running those columns out, get a higher oxidation, which should give us a higher gold and silver recovery to get to the target recoveries we assumed in the PEA. We expect to get those results by the end of this year or latest early next year, and that then will allow us to take the PEA, which I'll go through the results from the PEA in a moment, and move forward to a PFS. So the other thing over the last year, we can now show you that it's working at a large scale in the columns, and you just saw the pictures as it's changing color. We can show you on individual crystals in the samples that have been oxidized that how it's working. And then we also now clearly understand why it works at the pHs that we're using and the chemical mixtures that we're using. So what this slide is showing you is the top right-hand corner is clean marcasite. Marcasite is a type of pyrite. It's reasonably unstable. The picture on the top left is a crystal in the samples after oxidation. We cut it, put it under a scanning electron microscope, and you can clearly see the structure is the same, but the little red dots, the scanning electron microscope can allow us to take chemical analysis at individual points. And as you can see, the entire crystal had converted to iron oxide. So any gold that is in there was available to then leach. The bottom left is another crystal, and this one's really interesting because what this shows is that the oxidation process has allowed it to turn it into a honeycomb. It's eaten its way into the crystal, and the shiny pieces are still pyrite, and the gray pieces in the middle. And remember, this has been cut in half to see inside the group of crystals. And you can see how it's gone down cleavage planes and crystal boundaries and has started to eat it out and turn it into a honeycomb. So again, if there was gold inside there, and there is gold inside these crystals, the cyanide can then get at it. And that's why we're seeing the improvement in recovery. The third thing we see is the bottom right. And what's interesting about this picture is two things. One, you can clearly see how it started oxidizing from the outside and worked its way into the core. I guess the easiest analogy is if when you go to the beach and you see the anchor chains that they often use as fences at the beach on the promenades and things, if you see those, as they rust, they crack. You can see the individual cracks in that outer layer, which is the iron oxide. And if you cut that chain in half, you'd see a solid core still of iron, because if it wasn't there, it would have broken and collapsed. And that is exactly the same thing as is happening with that crystal. What's also interesting is if you look to the left-hand side, you can see there's a crack that runs into the pyrite as well as through the oxides on the outside. And you see how it's preferentially gone after that crack? That's how the oxidation process gets to the gold and silver that's locked up. So we now know it works on a reasonable scale in columns. We can show you pictures of the individual crystals and how they're oxidizing, and we understand why it's working as well. So moving on to the PEA that we put out a little while back. So starting at 15,000 tons a day, phase one, the PEA clearly demonstrates that there is a smaller expandable project there that will produce significant cash flow, average operating cash flows of $110 million a year. We did all this at $1,600 gold and 22 silver. The initial capital of just under $360 million a year. The head grade at about 1 gram a ton. The assumed recoveries of 70 to 75% recoveries. We've got to 60 on the gold at the moment. So we're close, not quite there, but the expectation is those next columns that are oxidizing faster will get us there. And that would give us this production of about 150,000 ounces a year gold equivalent. Strip ratio on the mine is 2.2 to 1, so very reasonable strip ratio, and an all-in sustaining cost of $750 an ounce. So a very attractive project to keep investing, keep de-risking, keep moving forward as fast as we can. pick your numbers. This is the sensitivities depending on what you believe the gold price is going to be or where it might go, gold and silver prices, and you can see the appropriate NPVs and IRRs. The other thing I mentioned at the beginning, that this technology is green. We got this data from Barrick's sustainability report. The reason I use Barrick's is I know they've got individual operations that are either 100% heap leach gold production, but still with diesel trucks and diesel power, or they're 100% autoclave. So the two projects are Pueblo Viejo, which is in the Dominican Republic, or Valadero, which is in Argentina. Pueblo Viejo is an autoclave. Valadero is a heap leach. So as you can see, it uses 90% less water, 90% less power. On top of that, there is no tailings dam with a heap leach. So that makes it significantly lower environmental impact, should make it easier to permit. Local communities are always concerned about if they're living near a tailings dam. They're always concerned about what's going to happen to their water supply. This is the greenest way you can go and produce gold from a refractory deposit. So when you put all that together, currently we are significantly undervalued. We currently trade at about $2 an ounce. That's still about right, despite yesterday's press release. There is a significant potential for revaluation just based on the two projects we now have. You've got a development story with Lucy that could give us a very, very nice smaller project, gold, all gold, not a lot of silver in it, potentially CIL leachable gold, known technology, known way to develop it. If the grade is a bit lower, it would be a heap leach. Same comments, known technology, easy to develop, huge upside, open both at depth and along strike. We'll put together a plan of where we need to infill drill going forward. And then the second one being Metatis, as we prove out the technology, one of the largest undeveloped gold mines in the world, and that will move forward, and the technology itself is applicable to other refractory gold deposits that we can apply anywhere around the world and sub-license our technology. So three potential significant ways we can add value and create value for our shareholders as we move forward. So that's the overall presentation for Metatis. With that, we can start going through the Q&A, and I'll try and do my best to answer each of the questions. So starting off, the first question is, what attracted Sun Valley and Eric Sprott to invest in Chesapeake? I guess both of them are interested in pretty much the same thing. Both Peter Palmetto and Eric Sprott look for large endowments or high potential of additional ounces being added. So they really look for these low-priced ounce in the ground and believe that the gold and silver prices are going to go much, much higher and therefore add significant value that way. Both in conversations are very supportive of us to continue de-risking what is now two projects. Eric, I talk to probably once or twice a year, the same with Peter Palmetto. And they're supportive of us continuing on this path of de-risking and moving the projects ahead and daylighting value. So I hope that answers that question. The next question is, how will things change when you're no longer the CEO? And what made you decide to leave if you're so enthusiastic about Chesapeake? I invite you to listen to some of the other presentations I've done. It is truly personal reasons. Many years ago, unfortunately, my wife had cancer. we're going through some medical issues at the moment, and to be honest, I need to be available for my family, and I've got to get my wife through this, because at the end of the day, I am incredibly enthusiastic about Chesapeake, and now with the Lucy discovery even more so, but I just can't continue in a full-time role for the time being until hopefully we get my wife sorted out. So it is truly personal reasons, and I may be still involved with the company. I am still the second largest single shareholder. So I'm definitely going to be following what we're doing and explaining to people in the company, if they'll listen to me, about where I think they should be going with it. So I'm going to be on the sidelines, but I'm still going to be around. Next question, any updates or outlook on the San Vicente litigation? As I've said many, many times, it is in the court process. There's no real updates until we get a ruling. We're doing everything we can to ensure that we've got the strongest case possible. We have got second opinions, not just from the lawyer that's litigating the case for us, to be sure that what we're doing is right and the strongest case we can put forward. It is in the courts. The courts are still very independent in Mexico, which is encouraging, because we obviously believe what the DGM did is incorrect and shouldn't have happened. And we just keep moving it ahead, but it takes time. And at the moment, as it's in front of the courts, that's really all I can say. Next question, what are the catalysts for the re-rating of Chesapeake? I think you saw part of it yesterday. We went up 6-something% as the market went down another 2% as the gold price continues to drop. So Lucy is obviously something that's very exciting for us, and we're going to continue to work on that, identify the gaps and how we can work out, does it extend, how far, other grades and tonnages and drill holes into it. And so we can work on Lucy all year round. It's not like some of the Northern Canadian projects when you can only drill when it's nice and warm, or drill when hell's frozen over. So we can work on it all year round, which is great. And then so we will be back there looking at filling in gaps, and I expect that we'll have some results early next year, maybe later this year, but certainly early next year. And then the Met test work, those columns that I showed, the green lines, they should be getting our results towards the end of this year. Hopefully that gets us to the 70% recovery, and then we can start a PFS. We're doing or done all of the work that we need to do to support a PFS. The block model's been rebuilt, hence the new resource. That will be used for the mine plan. The Met testing is ongoing. Topo, roads, power supply, water supply, we understand all of where that's going to come from. So they'll be able to do a pre-feasibility study starting hopefully early next year, and get that out definitely before Beaver Creek again next year. So they're the two big catalysts, or three big catalysts. And then whatever else happens, Lucy isn't the only regional project we've got, and we're quietly working through them. They were all there when we arrived, and it's just Lucy in particular caught our eye, and so we've been working on that one, but there are others we're looking at too. Next question is, what permits are still outstanding? So permit-wise, we have exploration agreements with the local communities. We have all the permits we need to do any work other than move into construction. at Metatis. We've got permits to be able to do some more drilling at Lucy. So from that point of view, we're fine permit-wise. Once we do the PFS, we can then start the environmental permitting system. And that takes, well, we don't know how long that takes anymore, but that would be the key permit that we need to get before we can make a construction decision at Metatis. Lucy is obviously way earlier. It's still a discovery, drilling, exploration story at the moment, with some very interesting upside and some great intercepts. So permitting for that at the moment isn't really required beyond what we've got. With that, unless there's any other questions, I think, moderator Eric, we're